the notification chimed at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Instagram. A photo from my wife Dana's book club friend, Michelle, the one who posts inspirational quotes about living your truth while cheating on her taxes. The image showed my son Jake, 17 and grinning, at what looked like a graduation celebration. Cap and gown, cake, balloons. And there, center frame, was Marcus Dana, study partner, from her real estate certification program cutting the cake like he'd been there for every milestone. I wasn't invited. Didn't even know it was happening. I zoomed in on the photo. There was Jake, my kid, the one I'd driven to baseball practice every weekend for 8 years. The one whose broken arm I'd held steady in the ER while Dana was at a mandatory weekend seminar. The one whose college applications I'd helped edit at 2 a.m. because Dana said the deadlines snuck up on her. But in that photo, Marcus stood where I should have been, wearing the smile I'd earned. I didn't call. Didn't text. I just walked to my home office and pulled out a leather portfolio I hadn't touched since 2016. The one from when we'd updated our wills after buying the cabin in Vermont. I flipped past the insurance policy, the power of attorney forms, the custody arrangements we'd drawn up, just in case. Found a blank page and started writing. Not feelings. Not a journal entry. An inventory. The party had been that afternoon. Dana told me she was taking Jake to visit colleges, just a mother-son bonding trip. She even packed the cooler with sandwiches I'd made the night before. Said they'd be back late, not to wait up. The performance was flawless right down to the goodbye kiss on my cheek. I kept scrolling through the photos. One detail stopped me cold. In the background of one image, barely visible, was a professionally printed banner, "Congratulations Jake, class of 2019, the future is bright." This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment celebration. This was planned. Catered. Coordinated. I opened the portfolio and wrote the date, June 15, 2019. Then 3 words, line crossed. Begin. No more pretending I didn't see the signs. No more waiting for Dana to remember I existed. No more financing my own erasure from my son's life. They wanted me invisible. But after 23 years as a forensic accountant, I'd learned something valuable: the quiet ones always keep the best records. She came home humming Sweet Caroline, the song she always hummed when she thought she'd gotten away with something. The same tune she'd hummed after Jake's first steps, after his first words, after every milestone that mattered. Now it made my stomach turn. She didn't look at me as she passed through the kitchen. Just a casual, "Hey babe, long day," like I'd spent the afternoon doing something mundane instead of discovering my son's graduation party through social media. No mention of the celebration, no mention of Marcus. The silence was worse than lies, it was dismissal. I didn't ask about it. Instead, I stood up and walked to my study, past the wall of family photos that told a very selective story. Pictures where I'd been cropped out. Dana and Jake at the beach. Dana and Jake at a cooking class. Dana, Jake, and Marcus at what looked like a baseball game. That one must have appeared recently. I closed the door, turned on my desk lamp, and dialed a number I'd memorized years ago. Patterson and Associates, Asset Protection Specialists. "How may I help you?" "This is David Coleman," I said. "I need to speak with Robert Patterson directly. He handled my estate planning in 2016. "One moment, sir." The familiar voice came on the line. "Dave, it's been a while. Everything okay?" "Let's talk about contingencies," I replied. That word means something to lawyers. It means you're preparing for a shift you're already expecting but haven't spelled out yet. It means you're ready to move, but surgically. We spoke for 50 minutes. No drama, no emotion. I laid out the situation. Patterson didn't need the backstory, he needed data. Asset lists, separate versus marital property, trust structures, educational fund protections. By the time I hung up, we had a framework in place. Not revenge. Protection. A firewall between me and the fantasy Dana was building with Marcus. At 8:23 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification I shouldn't have received. Facebook, a tag from Michelle, who'd apparently forgotten to adjust her privacy settings. The photo carousel from yesterday's surprise celebration was public. Marcus with frosting on his finger, Dana laughing like they were in a romantic comedy. Jake between them, wearing a mortarboard that read, "Future Engineer." The caption, "So grateful for chosen family." Hashtag new chapter, hashtag bonus parent, hashtag blessed. Dana had forgotten to block me. I clicked save photo, then opened a folder on my desktop I'd created months ago. Simply labeled S, inside, nested in innocuous subfolders, was a synced archive of our shared cloud storage. Dana had given me admin access years ago when she said technology was too complicated and asked me to handle all the digital stuff. She'd never revoked it. I started combing through the data. Not for revenge, for leverage. Within 2 hours, I'd found expense reports from her real estate firm showing conference fees that matched weekend getaways with Marcus. Hotel receipts billed to her company card for professional development in cities where Marcus happened to be flipping properties. Then I found the folder labeled investment opportunities. Inside were client lists, market analyses, and confidential property assessments, none of which she was authorized to share outside the firm. But there they were, forwarded to Marcus with subject lines like FYI, not for distribution, and keep this between us. I screenshotted payment apps showing transfers to Marcus labeled consulting fee, thanks for the insight, with laughing emojis. I archived voice messages where she joked about how her boss was too old school to track digital footprints. By 11 a.m., I had a digital paper trail that would end her career and potentially land her in legal trouble. Securities violations, breach of fiduciary duty, misuse of company resources. All because Dana, the woman who triple-checked every restaurant review before making reservations, had forgotten to remove one person from her photo notifications. I leaned back and smiled. Cold, calculated, mechanical. Because now I wasn't just the husband she'd discarded. I was the archivist of her unraveling. By Thursday, I was restructuring everything. The college fund Jake thought was ours was actually seeded with an inheritance from my grandfather's estate. Separate property, legally untouchable in a divorce if properly documented. Dana had never asked about the source, she just assumed it was community property. I called Patterson. Within hours, the college fund was transferred to an irrevocable educational trust with Jake as the sole beneficiary. My brother David, a retired judge, was named trustee. Dana's access, 0. The trust was structured so Jake could only use it for tuition, books, and room and board. Nothing else. The cabin in Vermont was next. Dana's name had never been added to the deed, we talked about it but never followed through. With new paperwork and the same trust structure, the property was now Jake's, managed by the trust, legally separated from any marital assets. I made copies of every document. Stored them in a fireproof safe, backed them up to multiple drives, sent copies to my brother. Dana asked about weekend plans. I suggested we visit the cabin one last time. She smiled and said it sounded romantic. She had no idea she was saying goodbye to a property she'd never legally owned. The text came while we were having dinner. Chicken parmesan, slightly burnt the way she cooks when she's distracted. Her phone lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Arf Mitchell. She angled the screen away like instinct. I kept eating, nodding as she talked about the open house she'd shown that day and how Jake should consider architecture school. Arf Mitchell wasn't a client. It was me. Mitchell Property Group was a shell company I'd created months earlier, registered in Delaware, complete with a professional website and fake testimonials. I'd positioned Mitchell as a small-time investor looking for insider information about upcoming developments. Dana had met Mr. Mitchell at a networking event I'd quietly sponsored. All it took was one phrase: "I'm always looking for properties with development potential before they hit the market." Her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. 3 days later, she was feeding Mitchell confidential market analyses, zoning reports, and client information. She called it helping a fellow entrepreneur. What she was actually doing was trafficking proprietary information for promised equity in a company that existed only on paper. I documented everything. Screenshots of her texts, recordings of her calls, PDF attachments she'd emailed from her company server. Each file was time-stamped, each thread cataloged. I even had her on audio saying, "Don't tell anyone I told you this, but the Morrison Street development is going to be huge. You should move fast." She was building my case against her, one eager violation at a time. By Friday, I'd activated the notification system I'd built into our shared calendar app. Anytime she made or received dinner reservations, I'd get an alert. At 4:17 p.m., I got a ping, "Table for 3 confirmed." 7:30 p.m. Osteria Luna under S. Coleman. No message to me. No invitation. Just her, Jake, and Marcus. Jake texted me around 6 p.m., "Hey Dad, Mom invited me to dinner with Marcus. She said it's just casual. You okay with that?" I wrote back, "Of course, buddy. Have fun. Tell Marcus I said hi." Then I logged into the restaurant's reservation system using the admin access I'd obtained months earlier when I'd helped them debug their online booking platform. I quietly canceled the reservation, marked it as "party unconfirmed." At 7:45 p.m., Jake texted, "No table. We're standing here looking confused. Mom's annoyed. Going to find somewhere else." I didn't reply. Just smiled into my coffee. But the real message came later, at 9:22 p.m. Dana's phone buzzed with a text she couldn't ignore: "Urgent, potential compliance violation flagged. Need to discuss client confidentiality breach. Call first thing Monday. Patricia, legal." The text was real. It was from her firm's general counsel. Someone had reported the leaks, provided evidence, built a case. The breadcrumbs Dana had been dropping for months had finally led investigators to her door. She stared at the screen, picked up the phone, put it down, picked it up again. Like blinking might change the words. For the first time in months, she didn't hum. Didn't float around the house with her quiet confidence. She just sat there, silent, like a woman who'd suddenly realized the spotlight was on her, and she wasn't holding the script. Saturday morning, Dana left for a wellness retreat. "I need to reconnect with myself," she said, loading her car with yoga mats and meditation journals. Marcus wasn't going, allegedly. "It's women only," she explained. By noon, I'd changed every lock in the house. The property was already legally transferred to Jake's trust, but I wanted to make the transition clear. I installed a new security system, new codes, biometric access. I even replaced the garage door opener. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. I carefully packed her belongings, left them in clearly labeled boxes by the front door. I wasn't interested in petty revenge, I wanted a clean exit. Sunday evening, I printed a notice in bold letters: "Property under trust management. Entry by appointment only. Contact trustee for access." I laminated it and posted it on the mailbox. Dana came home around 9 p.m., probably expecting me to ask about her retreat, maybe even pour her tea. Instead, she found her belongings on the porch in a house she could no longer enter. She tried the keypad. Red light. Tried again. Still red. Called my phone. I didn't answer. Called Marcus. No response. She stood there for 20 minutes, holding her meditation journal, staring at the house where she'd planned to raise our son with another man. The porch light clicked off automatically after 5 minutes of inactivity. I watched from the upstairs window as she finally got back in her car and drove away. No screaming, no tears. Just the quiet realization that the life she'd been building had been built on property she'd never owned. The envelope arrived by courier the next morning. Black paper, formal script. Inside, a simple invitation, one conversation. No lawyers. Just us. 8 p.m. Sunday. The usual place. She knew where I meant. The private dining room at Meridian, where we'd celebrated our anniversary for 15 years. The same room where she'd checked her phone more than she'd looked at me the last time we were there. She arrived early, wearing the burgundy dress I'd once said made her look stunning. But the room was dark except for one pendant light hanging over a small table. No wine, no music. Just a manila folder and a screen mounted on the wall. The slideshow began without introduction. Her messages to Marcus, one by one. Her voice recordings. Her emails to R. Mitchell. Each one time-stamped, documented, damning. Then the screen went red. Legal language appeared, violation of professional ethics. Breach of client confidentiality. Misuse of proprietary information. The screen went black. Dana opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside, a signed confession from Marcus, every property tip, every leaked report, every confidential conversation. He'd given her up completely when investigators approached him. There was a sticky note clipped to the front. He didn't even wait for them to finish asking. You were right, he was always a coward. She sat there holding the papers, finally understanding that the game had ended long before she realized she was playing it. The final documents arrived 3 days later. Judgment of dissolution, filed and approved. The divorce was done. No hearing, no negotiation, no contest. Just the legal conclusion to a marriage that had ended the moment she decided I was replaceable. Attached were her termination papers from the real estate firm, a federal subpoena for her records, and the deed transfer showing Jake's trust now owned everything that mattered. At the bottom, a handwritten note, this isn't revenge. It's resolution. I won't see you in court because I've already seen enough. Sometimes the quietest people are the ones you should never underestimate. I didn't yell, didn't beg, didn't make threats. I just watched, documented, and moved with the precision of someone who'd spent decades following paper trails. Dana thought she was erasing me from Jake's life. Instead, she'd handed me the blueprint for erasing her from mine. The funny thing about quiet people, we're always listening, always watching, always remembering. And when we finally decide to act, we don't just win, we rewrite the ending entirely.